Good morning. All right, today it's all about pi. We are going to be looking at circles and how to find the circumference of a circle and the area of a circle. So the first thing is our definition. Circumference is the distance around a circle. That's what we call the perimeter with any other kind of shape. The reason it's different for a circle is very simply because the formula for finding perimeter is add up all the sides. Since a circle has no sides, it doesn't fit the definition. So that's why they have a new word for that. So circumference is a one-dimensional length, and it's the distance around the circle. Next, we have our pi. I know you've been waiting for pi. Pi is the ratio or the comparison of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Meaning, if you take the circumference of the circle, remember that's the distance around the outside, and you divide it by the diameter, the distance across the center, you always get the same number. Pretty cool. No matter how small, no matter how large the circle is, you will get this number, which they've labeled as, given it its own name, pi. 3.14 is what we usually use to just abbreviate it or round it. It is a number that is something that goes on forever and ever. And we'll talk later in the chapter about the fact that pi is an irrational number. Okay, so if we're finding the circumference of a circle, what we will use for our formula is pi times the diameter. And again, regular units for your length because you're just measuring that one dimension. And I would love it if you would just go ahead and use the pi button on your calculator. Sometimes the directions might tell you otherwise. They might want you to use the rounded 3.14. They may even want you to use the equivalent of a rounded fraction, which is 22/7. But for the most part, we're always going to use our pi button. So how do we find the area of a circle? Remember, even though it's a circle now, we're still talking squares as meaning how many squares will fit inside the circle. So our formula for that is pi times the radius squared. So we need the radius, we square it. Remember, we have a button on our calculator that does that. It's this button right here. Okay. And the reason I've put in here use your order of operations is because you can't multiply pi times your radius and then square it. Remember, please excuse. Excuse was the exponent. Exponents need to happen before multiplying. And finally, I can't stress enough this last sentence. This is probably what trips more people up than anything. Using the right thing, radius or diameter. Remember, the radius is half of the diameter. So if you have a circle and they've given you the diameter of the circle, but you're looking to find the area and you need the radius for that, the first thing you need to do is divide your diameter by 2. Because then you know your radius. And if they give you a circle and they give you the radius, you want to find the circumference of the circle, which needs the diameter, then you need to double your radius. I highly suggest, here we go, I highly suggest that if you have a circle, let me pick a different color on that. If they have a circle and they've told you that the radius is 4 inches, that you go ahead and write r equals 4 and d equals 8. Because once you've taken care of that, that's a big part of what everybody gets wrong. Because again, they just look at that number that's there and they kind of quickly go about their business and they don't pay attention. So I don't want that to happen to you. I think this is a really good suggestion, is to write down your radius and diameter before you start getting the circumference and the area of those circles. one last thing I'd like to show you. So sometimes, even though we have a formula like circumference equals diameter times pi, we might not be looking for the circumference. That might be what we have. So just to remind you from our little bit of algebra that we have studied so far this year, we know that if we are looking for something, all we have to do is undo whatever's with it to figure out what it is. Okay, so this diameter, which is what we're looking for, find the diameter. This diameter is being multiplied by pi. So if we divide pi on both sides, we'll find the diameter. So in this instance, we would take 16 divided by pi. Again, you could use the button on your calculator for that. You get 5.1. 5.1 what? Maybe it's feet, maybe it's inches, doesn't matter. When you are using pi, you will usually get a long decimal as your answer. We're going to be using the general rule of thumb is to round it to the nearest tenth. So round it so it has one decimal place. All right, let's go have some pie.